Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and with the recent launch of LEGO Ninjago Dragons Rising Season 2 Part 1, I figured we may as well take a look back at one of the most iconic vehicles from Season 1 of Dragons Rising, which was Sora's transforming mech bike racer. Now, we got a really fun LEGO set from Dragons Rising last summer about Sora's transforming mech, but honestly, it wasn't that accurate compared to what it actually looked like in the show. And so, today, we're going to be checking out a full review of a completely revamped version of the Mech Bike Racer, which takes inspiration and a couple of pieces from the original set, but reimagines it to be a lot more show accurate with a lot more interesting details. There's even little bits of details that you can see in the show, like a back cockpit compilot for Aaron, as well as the wheels actually on the ends of the feet. This one is just a huge improvement over the original set, and I cannot wait to showcase a comparison and review with each of them, and you can check out the links to the instructions and parts list for this set and this custom model down in the description below. But let's go ahead and jump in to my in-depth review of the completely rebuilt and reimagined Sora's transforming mech bike racer right now. So this is a more show-accurate version of Sora's Mech, which was a set that came out for Ninjago Dragons Rising last year, but ultimately, after seeing it in the show, didn't end up being that accurate, and that's what this model is trying to accomplish. Now, this is a mock made by Ido K, who I found on Instagram, and they were posting photos of this incredible build, and I just knew I had to build it myself because this, to me, was the perfect build for Sora's Mech, especially when compared to what you see in the show. Now, unfortunately, this is not just an alternate build of the existing set. In order to accomplish a lot of what it's doing, you need to actually have a ton of extra pieces, which totally makes sense because you really were trying to go for accuracy here instead of just making a rebuild of the original set. However, what I did is that I did purchase another copy of Sora's Mech, and I was able to use the pieces for that mech when building this one. It uses like 20 to 30% of the pieces in the set, so it probably would have been cheaper just to buy all the pieces myself and not buy another copy of the set on top of it, but I figured why not just take the extra parts from my own collection and use what I can, and that way I could actually use these stickers as well. We'll be doing some direct comparisons later, but first I do want to showcase the original set very quickly just to highlight some of the things that I actually felt like the original set got wrong in the sense of not being very accurate to the show. Now, the cool thing is that the original set does have the capability to transform into a motorcycle. It's probably one of the most simple transformations you can get. It literally just requires you bending the legs backwards, then you kind of fold the arms inwards, and you're supposed to move the blades backwards, but for the most part, this is kind of what it's supposed to look like in motorcycle form, which is cool because that is something that appears in the show in motorcycle form, but if there was any set to make not a transforming set and instead just make it something you could rebuild, it was this one, because Sora's entire elemental power in the show is that she takes apart her mech and rebuilds it. It's not that the mech inherently can transform into a motorbike on its own, it's that she literally takes it apart, and part of her power is kind of taking the components and rebuilding it into a different model. So for me, the transforming feature of the original set is cool, but I think that a lot of compromises were made to allow that to happen, including just making it not very accurate to what we actually saw on the TV show itself. Obviously, going from model to show does inherently involve a lot of individual changes, and I'm sure that the designers, especially when putting the model together, perhaps the show model was based off of concept as artwork or designs or prototypes for this set, where maybe it once looked something like this, but when they decided to do the motorcycle transforming feature, they changed it around. But regardless, this is much more accurate to the model that we actually can see in the show itself, and I'm a lot happier with the shaping of the entire model because it's really a night and day difference. The set is not bad, it just really doesn't look like how it looks in show. Now, setting that aside, I did actually bring alongside the minifigures from the original set when doing the review of this. One thing I will note is that technically you cannot build the same exact build for the evil version of the Imperium speeder for the original side build of the set, but I made something very close. Really the only piece that was used in this model that wasn't available was one of the hinge pieces, so basically what I did is I just used some of the other hinges already available in the set. It's not exactly the same build, but it works well enough, so if you do want to buy the original set and then just get the extra pieces you need for this, it's very possible to do so. Setting all of the figures aside though, let's go ahead and take a closer look at just this revamped model of Sora's mech by 8OK, which is a really well-designed mech, and a model that I really hope appears more in the show itself, because it was very cool when we saw it in that Mech Master race. Now, there's actually quite a lot of different amounts of posability that you can get out of the model itself. Each of the fingers can be moved, you can actually have it grasp into a fist or move them individually. The arms are mounted on ball joints, so you can get a lot of action poses out of it, and I do like how the ball joint positioning kind of makes it be a permanently 90-degree angle, so you can kind of have a much more accurate look and feel to how it plays and looks like in the show itself by moving those around. There's waist articulation, so you can bend it on the waist here. There's also kind of mid-joint articulation, so there's waist articulation to that regard as well, so you can bend it up and down like so. I guess that there's probably a way that you can sort of configure this into a motorcycle if you really wanted to, by kind of moving the legs backwards and then kind of putting the wheels down. Like, I guess this sort of works, but it's not really the intent. The intent is not to mimic the motorcycle form in the show perfectly. The intent is to mimic the mech form in the show perfectly, and that's really what this accomplishes quite well, if I do say so myself. Now, there actually is knee articulation on click joints here, so you can actually bend the knees however way you want. This is really useful in getting it in kind of that roller skating pose, where if you're really careful with it and are able to pose it up, you can actually get it in a pretty cool rolling pose. Now, there are a few limitations, especially because of the way that, well, the feet are literally wheels, so it makes it a little bit harder to pose this thing, but what the builder has done has placed these clear stands on the back, so it is actually possible to pose the feet individually on the clear stands if you want to, and if you do want to as well, you can actually just use these as feet, so you can kind of have it standing if you don't want to use the wheels when it's walking around. Sure, it's a little bit fragile. This is using building techniques that really absolutely would not be done in a standard Lego set, but I do really appreciate just how surprisingly sturdy it is and posable when you actually have it standing on the wheels, which is kind of the way that it looks in show. All you need to do is kind of just set it up, move it like so, and there you go, you can get this into all sorts of crazy poses. Now, in the instruction manual for the set, they actually do specify that you can actually adjust the length of these clear pieces to allow you to change up the pose. So let's say you want to push that inwards to allow you to really have this front leg stretched out like so. And you can accomplish that by just changing around the way that you want to angle these individual pieces, which is something I really appreciate. It's very cool how so much effort was put into actually allowing you to pose this up. If you want to get it back into a more standard pose, you can kind of pull this out, just push these pieces back downwards, attach them up, and there you go. This is now ready to rumble. And there's so many different things that you can do with it that still feels like it's very accurate to the animation itself, but also makes it very posable. Now, moving on from that, there's also, if you go into the back here, some additional pieces of posability. If you recall in one of the episodes in the show, I think it was the episode where this mech was first introduced, there were some back arms for a back pilot like Aaron to be able to control and kind of fend off some of the other attacks, and they've actually made an attempt to include these here with the usage of the LEGO Hero Factory CCBS Beast Claws. There is a windscreen that is included on the back. Unfortunately, no minifigure can sit in there, which I do understand this is pretty compact for what it is, but it is nice that you can actually angle these whichever way that you want, so you can really have some sort of back claw angling action to be able to defend the back exhaust. And yes, you do have that large exhaust in the back, which they use to kind of boost themselves past when rescuing Ryu, which is a very cool addition because clearly the Machist really studied all of the different details of this model as seen in the show itself and really tried to give us the best possible version of the model that we could get. Moving onwards, the arms are just mounted on ratchet joints, which you can see here, so they bend back and forth like so. And then the cockpit itself is a little finicky. There's a reason why I haven't necessarily placed Sora in there for this review, and the reason for that is because you have these crowbar pieces that are kind of just barely adjusted into these kind of bar attachment elements right here. So this is pretty tight. It's a tight fit to actually have these in, and you actually have to lift them outwards and maybe even detach some of the crowbar pieces to get Sora in there, but it is very show accurate. She does have this kind of golden ribcage type thing going over her when she actually is piloting the mech, so it is nice to see that, although it's definitely one of the more frustrating parts about the model. It's just actually getting her inside the mech itself is fairly difficult.
Otherwise, this is a model which I'm really happy about. I'm happy about how much you can pose it. I really love just how dynamic it is, and most importantly, when I play with this, this feels like the model in the show. This feels like something that I would see from the animated series come to life, and obviously what they do a lot with Ninjago is they completely reinterpret the mechs and the builds to give it a show-accurate aesthetic, but this really nails it in brick-built form. I've been reviewing a couple of custom Ninjago mocks like the Brick Legends, Samurai X Mech, and Fire Mech, and Lightning Mech, and this I feel is very much along those lines, which is a mock that basically takes what was something that was introduced in the show as a Lego set that wasn't quite accurate and then transforms it into something really cool. And yes, it is playable, so you can kind of have it be rolling on the wheels themselves, doing that roller skating action, which is a really cool design for the mech, and I really wish that they actually made the official Lego set be on these wheels, because really, the only other time that we've ever gotten a mech that mainly used wheels as its feet was in Cole's mech from the Lego Ninjago movie, and that was all the way back in 2017, and it would be really cool to see Lego attempt to do something like this today in terms of an official set. Still, especially when we compare it next to the official set itself, I think it's really a night and day difference. The official set feels like a completely different build, and I don't dislike the set itself. I think it's a totally fine and very fun to play with mech, but this one just totally accurately captures what you wanted to see in the show itself. Yes, there are a lot of details about it that absolutely would not fly as an official Lego set. It's a lot more fragile than the official set. There are building techniques that are a little bit strange and questionable at points, but you cannot deny that this feels to me like the perfect Dragons Rising Sora mech from the show, and I am a big fan of how the builder was able to pull this off. That's all for this. I hope you enjoyed this showcase of a custom Lego Ninjago mock. Again, the instructions are available for free on Rebrickable right now. If you want to get them, I've linked them in the description below. Huge shout out and thank you to the builder for putting this incredibly detailed and comprehensive mock together, and I can't wait to see what else the builder does, because this was so good.
Alright, and with that we have summed up my thoughts on the custom Lego Sora's Transforming Mech Bike Racer mock, which you can find linked in the description below. Huge shout out to the mockist who actually did this. I was absolutely blown away when I saw this on Instagram and knew I just had to recreate it. And it was a ton of fun just getting another copy of the set, but also supplementing it with a ton of other pieces, making the perfect version of the model. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below, and are you encouraged to actually create this new construction yourself? I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more Lego news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming away very soon, and bye for now.